almost thought about going down today and trying to cut more trees up on the field. But I went down there yesterday afternoon and kind of looked around. Almost got my truck stuck. And the snow's so damn deep that most of the trees are under the snow or like level with the snow. So that would have been fun. And then last night and early this morning we got another 4 inches of lake effect. So it's gonna have to do some settling out, a little bit of melting before we go back down there and do anything with any sort of efficiency. But yesterday afternoon I went over to my house, got this running gear. So the plan for today and tomorrow is to work on getting the tank, which is still on the trailer, mounted on this thing. I'm gonna get this thing down to the shop real quick so it can start melting off. Before I put the tank on it, I want to pull the wheels off, check the wheel bearings real quick. We checked the wheel bearings when we first got this thing, because the whole reason we ended up with this gear was Dad bought a boring mill and he needed something to haul it home with. So we ended up, he bought this gear to haul, I think we hauled the upright on this because it was a vertical boring mill. Can't remember if we hauled, no, we hauled the table on this. We hauled the table and the base on this in one piece. And then we hauled the upright home. We took that David Bradley gear that's that green barge box is on. We took that gear and we hauled the upright on it. But anyway, when we first got this thing, we checked the wheel bearings were pulled apart and repacked and everything, because Dad didn't want to have any issues pulling that boring mill home, because we pulled it home probably 15-20 miles. So Dad got it for where he used to work. But anyway, I was probably, it was after we got my 66, but not too long after. And it was before we had the 525, so I was probably only 10 or 12 when we got this gear. And it sat inside most of the time, and then the last couple years has been kicked out since we scrapped the boring mill, because it basically turned to junk sitting in that barn. Because Dad's whole plan was he was hoping to have a shop built big enough to put the boring mill in, because the boring mill was big enough that it was going to have a pad poured to sit on. It was that big of a mill, and it just never worked out. So we ended up scrapping the mill, and then when that happened, his gear got kicked outside. So anyway, I want to check the gear, or check the wheel bearings on it, just to make sure they're still okay. They should be fine. The seals were good. I just want to make sure there's no water in them. There shouldn't be, because the wheel's still rolled. You'd think if there was water in them, the wheels would be locked up because of the ice. But just better safe than sorry. This tire is going to need a tube in it because it goes flat. The tires on it really aren't that bad. They're a little checked, but they'll get me through a couple years anyhow. The sidewalls on them are still decent, which is the big thing. I mean, they're not great, but it seems like these things are like a stupid heavy tire too. 12.515 SL. Can't remember how many ply. I thought these things were a really heavy ply rating too. Made in USA. 44 PSI. Where the hell's the ply rating? Normally they put it like around here somewhere. Unsafe for highway use. 10 ply, yeah. 10 ply implement tires. Those things are gonna have to get a lot of weather checking before they turn to shit. Well, like I say, that one needs a tube because it's gone flat. Ever since we've owned the gear, it'll hold air for a month or so and it goes flat, but just want to make sure we get a good tube in there. And the other ones are still holding air. They've held air the whole time. It's just this guy, so I got to get a tube put in it. But anyway, because of all the guys that bitch about how much I talk in my videos, fucking idiots, I'm gonna run this thing down to the shop real quick so we can start thawing off, and we'll come back up here and get the trailer pulled out, get the forks on the tractor so we can get the tank off. And then we'll set the tank down there so that it can thaw off while we're working on the gear. So that's the plan. got picked up in the air, I got to looking underneath it, and there's a couple things that I want to straighten out and weld back together real quick. This plate has a 90 degree on it that's bent back. It's probably about 5 inches, or there's probably about a 5-inch leg underneath there, and over there on that side it got tore and it's bent up, so I want to bend that back down flat and weld it back straight. I want to cut these box tubes off so it'll set down in the gear. There's just a couple of small things I want to straighten on it that I think it's going to be easier to work on upside down. And I want to, these studs are kind of welded on these straps, kind of janky, so I want to cut those off and weld new studs on. Plus they're just junk, and I put new bolts on the other side and put new rubber in there, so it's just going to be easier to do everything I want to do. So roll the tank up out of the saddle and get the saddle in the shop and work on the saddle by itself. So I'm just gonna leave it sit out here while we work on the gear. The gear shouldn't take that long. I don't even know if I'm gonna take the wheel bearings off. I'm just gonna pull the wheels off and spin them and make sure. Might pop the bearing caps off and check and make sure there's no water in there, but if everything feels good, I'm not even gonna bother pulling them apart because I know they've been apart and repacked. And then we'll cut the bolts and everything off these straps, get the straps off, get the tank off the saddle, get the saddle up in there. We'll work on that separate. So change the plans a little bit. Okay, so I've been through, checked all the wheel bearings. I didn't even bother pulling the wheels off. There was no signs that any water got into the hubs. There was no rust whatsoever. It was all fresh grease. I was able to take a grease needle and get through the outer bearing and pump new grease into the center of the hub. Grease the tie rods. I'm gonna have to get new Zerks for the kingpins because they won't take grease. My guess is the Zerks are just bad. The kingpins aren't froze, so there's no reason why they shouldn't take grease other than that. The pivot pin for the tongue is froze. And the worst part about that is the main pivot here is a box assembly, and you can't get any heat onto the cross tube, so I got it soaking with some penetrating oil, and we're just have to keep an eye on it. I pulled the Zerk out so I could fill the center hole. I doubt that works, but sometimes you get lucky. But you want to get that freed up. You don't just want these little bushings being all you're pivoting on. You want the pin's supposed to be bucked up against this little lock tab here so that the whole pin rotates inside the tube. So I got to get that freed up, but we're just going to let it soak for a while. And I got to get this stud bent back up straight so that I can use my extendable tongue. I don't know what the heck they managed to do. It's almost like they backed over it or something. But so that's gonna be my project here real quick. I gotta take hopefully if I take a grinder and snag off this little burr here, I can get that nut off and we can just get on here with a piece of pipe and stand that thing back up, hopefully. So give her a shot. can't believe that worked. All right, well, I couldn't get it perfectly straight. It's got a little bit of a rink in it because it was laid, it had two kinks in it. It had a kink in it. It had bent hard over this piece of flat stock, and then up a little higher, it had bent again, so it had like a double kink in it. It wasn't just a solid, or it wasn't just in a curve. So it was hard to get that out, but I got it out enough to make the hitch work, which is what I was after, because you put 1,000 gallons of water on that thing, you ain't moving it to hook it up, so having that extendable tongue was going to be a lifesaver. I'd really like to find one of these things to put on my, what is now going to be my seed tender wagon that I used to use for fertilizer. But that's going to be a next year project, because in order to haul beans, in order to use that for a bean tender, I'm going to have to get rid of the steel flighted auger, which is junk anyway. The flighting's wore out, which is why it has a hard time moving fertilizer. I just haven't put an auger in it yet because I didn't know what I was going to do with it. But I'm going to put a brush auger in it for moving seed. But those are a little expensive, and we're going to spend enough money getting this liquid setup done for this year. So next year we'll have a bean tender, and that's going to be nice because I can buy beans in boxes and not have to carry all them bags around. But anyway, the tongue is going good, or the tongue works now. I went down and measured the cradle for that thing, and the cradle measures 112 front to back, and the frame right now, or the reach right now, is set at 106, so I'll have 3 inches of overhang. Plus, I think, I didn't measure the tank. I think the tank overhangs like another 8 inches. So the overhang will be perfect. I'm not gonna move the reach any. We'll have to move the stakes. There's another set of holes, but I'm not even sure that the inside set of holes is gonna be narrow enough. What I'm probably gonna do, since I'll have the tank off and it'll be easy to move around, is we'll just set the cradle on here without the tank and get it jostled around and get everything nailed down where it's supposed to be. And then we'll set the tank on when it's all said and done. But really all I got with everything set up perfect the way it is, the only thing I got to mess with on the gear yet is hopefully that pin will free up, but I don't have very high hopes. So I'm just going to have to let it soak. And I got to get these grease zerks. So, but with all that out of the way, and I got this tire aired up. When I put air in it, it turns out the water valve was leaking. I swapped the Schrader valve in it, and it was still leaking, so there was something, I don't know if it was cracked or the threads were bad or what, but there was something wrong with where the Schrader valve seated in the water valve, so I put a new water valve in it. We'll keep an eye on it. If it holds air, that means I don't got to get a new tube. And I was looking at this thing, and I got one mismatched tire of all stupid things. It's the same size, that brand of tire must run a little shorter sidewall so that the gear actually dips down in the front, but the way this thing pulls, you'll never notice it. It'll probably get new tires eventually, but for now we ain't worried about it. We're just trying to get the thing put together. So I'm gonna roll this thing outside real quick and go eat some lunch, and then we'll go down and get the cradle and the tank separated and bring that up here and start working on it. tell you what, that damn tank was stuck. I think smacking it with the forks loosened it enough, and I was able to get it, the pry bar under that side there, and I gave it one good yank, and then it finally popped, but it wasn't going on its own. But all I got to do to this, straighten these corners out a little bit, kind of do some dolly work. The holes that they had been using are kind of pulled up a little bit, so gonna beat those back down flat. Obviously cut the box tube off, because those are gonna end up right about on top of the bolsters, and we don't want that. And this is that tear I was telling you about. I got to beat this back down flat and weld that back up. And I might do a little bit of work here. It looks like it broke here at one point and I kind of scabbed something very poorly on it. I might try to clean that up a little bit and straighten this all out in here. Looks like we got a crack right there that needs some attention. So yeah, there's really not a whole lot I got to do to this. This side's in a little, there's a doink right there, needs beat down. And then I might, well, my plan for this is I'm going to get everything situated, get my pump mounted, do all the work to it that I want to get to it, run it for a year, make sure it's the way I want it, make sure I don't want to change anything, and then pull the tank back off, blast it, and paint it. That way it doesn't look so raggy. But, anyway, that's where we're at, so I'm going to blow this thing off real quick and we'll roll it over so I can cut that box tube off. That's going to be a little fun. That's probably going to take a little bit of heat to fix that, but shouldn't be that big of a deal. right, I think I reached my stopping point for today. I got pretty much all the fixing done. I cut this scab off that they had here and welded, got that crack beat back out flat, and welded it back shut. That piece of strap steel that they had scabbed on there wasn't even doing anything. There was no penetration on that weld whatsoever. There was 3 little short ones back here that I damn near busted off with a chisel, and then got a hold of it and just ripped the thing off. It wasn't doing a damn thing. So that's fixed. I got this all beat back out as best I could. There's only, the way it was tweaked, there's only so much you could do with it, but it's fairly flat now. And then this side, yeah, I got all the, there was 3 cracks on this side, one where each of the saddles is. It almost appears like at some point somebody almost rolled a tank out of this thing or something, and it like tried to cave this side in, because it's ripped out on top, and every one of them is ripped where one of these gussets is welded in. Actually, they're all ripped right there at the top of that gusset. So there was only so much I could do, because when you're tore in a confined space like that, and then I also think because these bows are not welded in through here at all, they're just formed and they're welded on the bottom. When it tore out, it also sprung these in a little bit. So basically, in order to get this back flat, you would have to push this down, push this in, and pull out in here. And basically the only way to fix this would have been to go cut those gussets out, beat it back out flat, weld the gussets back in. It just wasn't worth that kind of work. So I welded the crack shut best I could, and you slap some paint on there, and if I didn't tell you, you'd probably never notice them unless you looked. Really, that was it. That was broke, that was broke. These welds here. And then I got one more crack that I found. I got a weld shut right here, because there was actually, this spot was actually pushed in, and it appeared it had been rubbing on the tank a little bit. So I got that beat back out, and I got to weld that crack shut. I got all the edges flattened out best I could. And I think what I'm gonna do is cut some like 3 or 4 inch long, probably 3 inch long, it'll be plenty, pieces of whatever I can find for scrap flat stock to get 6 pieces out of, and punch a 1/2 inch hole in them, and weld some straps in underneath these holes to reinforce them a little bit so that they don't pull in, because clearly the way that those things were getting jacked up into the, or clearly the way the straps were jacking up into the hole and trying to pull through, that steel's not heavy enough. So we'll weld something in there to reinforce it so that it's got more bearing surface to work on. And then all I got left to do is weld new studs on the straps, which I haven't decided if I'm going to weld studs on or if I'm going to punch holes in them and make some bolts with some flat stock heads that you can bolt to. That way if the threads ever go bad again, like the ones that were on here, you don't have to cut them off and weld them back on. You can just make new studs. Or I might do what they did on the other side, punch a hole in it and bend a 90 in it and just put 6 bolts in it, and then that might be the better route to go. Just do that. So yeah, but I think for now I'm going to set this thing on the gear so that I can get it out of here, so that Dad can park, or Mom and Dad can park in here tonight, and we will go back at it in the morning. Really shouldn't, like I said, really shouldn't have that much work left to do. Fix that crack, weld them tabs on there, fix the straps. get the stake situated on the gear, I'm only going to run a bolt in one corner, and then where the stakes are on either side of them, I'm going to weld 2 pieces of angle iron to the frame on either side of the stake. That way the thing can't slide forwards and backwards, and basically all that bolt's got to do is hold it down on the gear. Because being a steel frame, you do not want to put 2 bolts in it, or either across or Kenny. You only want 1 bolt in it, because you don't want to be tweaking the frame and putting stress on the tank, so you just want the 1 bolt in it. That way the frame will try to stay straight on its own. So yeah, anyway, I guess we'll just catch you guys tomorrow. Ain't no sense in stretching this out over 2 videos, because tomorrow probably ain't gonna have much more than 2-3 hours worth of work at the most. And we're back. Yeah, I already know what I gotta do to it. I already cut my little reinforcing plates. They're gonna go in there about like that. I'm gonna obviously, I gotta punch a hole in them first. I'm gonna set them up, or get the mill set up real quick. We're gonna punch these holes. Before I flip it over, I'm gonna weld this guy shut. I think I'm gonna weld. They had something at some point. I don't know if I had a steel tank sitting in this thing at some point or what, but there was 6 welds on each of the saddles, and when they torched whatever they torched out, they put a hole in it here and a hole in it. There was a second hole right there, so I'm gonna weld them holes shut real quick while it's sitting like this, and then flip it over and pick it up on the forklift forks. That way I'm not working on it on the ground. Weld these guys in, and I think we should be good to set it on the gear. Okay, I got all my reinforcing pads welded on. Most of the welds look like absolute shit because this stuff is just so pitted, and that's a hard spot to get in with a grinder to begin with. And I just could not get all the rust cleaned out of the pits, and the shit kept wanting to spatter and pool up, and it's stuck on there. And I mean, I've seen worse looking welds. They're just not some of my proudest achievements, but they're on there. They'll do their job. Got all the holes and everything welded shut. Basically, all the welding should be done on this. The next step is going to be put runners on it, because when you got a steel frame like this, you do not want it sitting directly on the running gear, because that's when shit like this happens. If you can see right there, you can see right where they had that box tube welded in. It wouldn't have fared so bad if they'd have had it back here under these channels, but they had them right here just ahead of these channels, and it beat the frame up, and that's what broke this section right here all out. Because steel on steel is just going to beat the living shit out of itself. So you need something there for a cushion. So these are actually, I don't know if I think they're true 2x. It's rough sawn, but actually 2 inches or is it 1.5 inches? It was probably 2 inches when they sawed it, and I bet it shrunk after it dried. It measures like 1 7/8 inches, which just doesn't seem like something that they would saw on a buzzsaw mill. Anyhow, these are actually rafter boards out of the old family farmhouse that we tore down, that used to sit right up there where the 8700 and 22 are. They're sitting on what used to be the basement. I got video tearing that house down. I don't exactly know what kind of wood these are, or this is. It could be oak. Could be pine. If it is pine, it is some of the hardest pine I've ever seen in my life, because I've built some stuff. We had a bunch of this, and I built some stuff out of it since then. But if you want to drive a nail into that, you have to pre-drill it. You ain't just sinking a nail in. You'll bend it every time. So if it is pine, it is hard as hell. So, and this kind of neat. These are the old insulators that they ran their wire through when they electrified the house. But we got to get all this crap off of here, and cut them down to 112 inches, and I'm just going to carriage bolt them full length. That'll give the frame a little bit more strength, and it'll act like a shock absorber, so it's not beating the crap out of itself bouncing on that running gear. And it will be a lot quieter, because if you have steel on steel, it's going to squawk and bang and whatnot. So that's the next step. And after we get these on, she's good to set on the gear. Check out how tight that end grain is. That is like, you don't get wood like this anymore. That's just beautiful. I think the trigger's going bad in that old saw. All right, so we got the saddle sitting on the gear. It looks like if I move this guy to this set of holes, obviously flip it around, and that guy, I'd have to, the bolster needs to slide, or the saddle needs to slide over a little bit. It's not quite center, but take this guy, move him to this set of holes and flip it around, and then take the front ones and just flip them around from where they are at. It should pretty much be where it needs to be. It might be a little loose, but you don't want it super tight neither. And it's actually offset to this side a little bit, so it's gonna be close. Damn it. Well, that sucks. That puts in a hole off. All right, so I got a system going here. When I had this bracket in the set of holes that's already in the bolster with everything the way it was, it pulled, everything was too far that way, and this bracket was a full hole off. So I took everything back apart, got the frame setting center on the bolsters, and that put both sides at half a hole off. And it was not going to be fun to try to slot the holes in the bolster. So the easiest thing to do is what I'm doing, is to chuck the stakes up in the mill and slot the holes in these. I got 3 done already. This is my last one. Had to put the tall vice jaws in. This isn't 100% perfect. I can't get a hold of it great, so I gotta be careful and take small bites, because end mills, although they are incredibly strong, they are incredibly brittle. So if you can't hold the part still, you got a very good chance of chipping the mill, or just flat out breaking it off, one of the two. So I just gotta take small bites to make sure this thing doesn't grab hold and try to yank that stake out of the vise. It wouldn't be so bad with a 4 flute mill, but we only had a 2 flute that was the right size, so gotta work with what you got. And since nothing about these is precision, I basically just set the mill by eye. Apparently at some point, a couple of these things had been run loose, because some of these holes were a little egged out, like that one. Like that right there. That's exactly what you don't want to happen. It would get right down to the last hole. Stay in there, you bitch. Oh, stayed on center though. God damn it. There we go. Take teeny tiny bites on this one so that doesn't happen again. That's where a 4 flute tap would, or not tap, 4 flute mill would make this easier, because on a 4 flute each one takes a little bit smaller bite, so you're not hogging as much material. There we go. And with any luck at all, the holes should line up. And they do. So we're good. Okay, it's all centered up. I got 1 bolt here in this front corner. I was going to put angle iron up on the stakes to keep it to give it some extra support, but Dad and I talked about it a little bit, kind of decided to wait and see how this thing acts before we do that, just to give it as little restriction of movement as possible. So basically where we're at is we're ready to set the tank back on, but I got to run home real quick because I need to make new belts to set the tank on, and I have a like 150 or 200 foot roll of conveyor belt at home that I've been cutting stuff off of to do things like this, so I gotta go home and cut a 5-foot chunk off so we can make new straps to lay in the saddles, because obviously you don't want metal on metal. So I'm gonna go home and do that real quick, and we'll be right back. There she be. Obviously don't have the hold down straps on it yet, but because those are going to be a little project on their own. But I got to shut her down so I can get this video up and still have time to go home and get ready for work tonight. So I figured this is a good stopping point. But the only thing that sucks on this tank, and it's something that can be rectified, it's just something that's gonna have to be modified. It doesn't have a big fill port or anything. Not that you need it, because you just fill through the bottom port. That's what everybody around here does. But it'd be nice to have it so you can look inside the tank and see, you know, it'd just be nice to have it for inspection purposes mainly. But it does got a tag on it. C&S Manufacturing, Pekin, Illinois. What it's got, some ports there. It's got the, well, they were using that tube for a breather. I'm going to try to find, well, that breather's going away. I'm going to put a breather in that 2-inch port, and then the it's already got a banjo valve and fitting back here, and this would be your suction and fill. You just you pump back, or you pump in and fill through the bottom. And then, like I say, this 2-inch up here will be a breather. So, and then the plan is to mount the motor and the pump, make a frame and mount it over here somewhere, and then over on this side make a box to store the hose in. Or I might just put hooks on and just wrap the hose around the back and make a spot up here to fasten it. I don't know, figure it out. But anyway, that's all we're getting done for today. So putter with it on and off with the time I got this, or after or before work this week. And well, Tuesday my seed guy's coming. Monday I'm going down to Helena to sign my paperwork for my finance, or for Helena Finance. I got another meeting on Thursday, so this week's gonna be kind of busy. But anyway, I guess that's it for this one, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.